Howdy guys, Bookie Laura here, and welcome to another Top 5 Wednesday. Now this week's theme is Top 5 Underrated Books. Now I must admit that I found this a little bit difficult to get started with, particularly because who decides if a book is underrated? I found that concept quite difficult. So the strategy that I used was I went onto Goodreads, all the books that I've read, and I ordered them by rating, by their average rating on Goodreads, starting with the lowest. All the books on my list had an average rating of 3.5 something or less. So the first book that I believe is an underrated book is one that I harp on about a lot, and that is The Stone Man by Luke Smitherd. This book is amazing. Basic premise, a stone man appears in a city centre, a statue, and everyone's very curious about it, and then one day he starts to walk, straight line, smashing up anything in his path, killing people that try and touch him, and it's the story of where he's going, what's going on, and it's that sort of mystery science fiction that I love. Everyone should read it. I insist. So the second book that I decided to include on my list was Pigeon English by Stephen Kellman. Now I read this book years and years ago, so the story isn't fresh in my mind, but the feeling I had when I read it is. The story basically follows a character, a boy who lives in the city who one day is faced with one of his classmates has been murdered. Then Harry and his friend decide to go and try and solve the murder. And it basically follows that journey, his adventure of trying to solve this mystery. So it sounds like it's going to be a really exciting mystery story, but it's not. It's actually a really tragic tale of inner city London, the culture that thrives there, the way of life, and actually it broke my heart in so many ways because it just really upset me to think that people live like this, and it opened my eyes, I suppose, to a different world. One of the really interesting features of the book is that Harry and his family are Ghanaian, I believe, and it's written with a lot of sort of multicultural slang, and it can be quite challenging to read at times, but I feel that that element was really important to the story. The third underrated book is one that I've read quite recently, and that is Mad About the Boy, the third book in the Bridget Jones series by Helen Fielding. I was surprised to see that this had quite a low rating, to be honest. I read it very recently and I thought it was just as good as any of the Bridget Jones books, so I was surprised to see it having a considerably lower rating. I think that's probably because time had passed, the audience had changed and their expectations were too high, but I was really disappointed to see it. I think that the sense of humour, the tone, the writing is really similar to all the other books, so I don't understand why people would have a significantly different opinion. The fourth book, I found it really difficult to choose, and that was because there were a number of Michael Crichton books that had quite low ratings. I'd probably go with Congo as being one of my favourite underrated books. I'm a massive Michael Crichton fan. I love the way he combines science with a great story, and I think that that's very rarely done and done well. I assume that one of the reasons it gets low ratings is because a lot of people don't like the sciencey bit, and they feel that detracts from it, but I really enjoy that, so I'm very sad for Michael Crichton. The fifth and final book that is one of my top 5 underrated books, the book that came out with the lowest rating overall, that is The Lifeboat by Charlotte Rogan. This had an average rating of 3.19, and I just felt really sad because actually I remember seeing this in a bookshop. The front cover and the blurb really appealed to me. It follows the story of a woman who was on a trip and the boat sank, and then they get on the lifeboat and it's over capacity, and it's the story of that journey on the lifeboat where there are too many people who are fighting to survive, and that kind of thing. Reminded me a little bit of Life of Pi, but only because there was a lifeboat, I expect. The element that I remember being really intrigued by is that unreliable narrator thing. It's told from one person's perspective, and you're very aware in an uncomfortable way when you're reading it that it doesn't feel like you're necessarily getting the whole story, and I found that I really enjoyed, for want of a better expression. So those are my top 5 underrated books. Please let me know if you've read any of them, and hopefully you feel like me that actually they deserve a higher rating than they get. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.